Is this the fault of men, or is this societal conditioning at large? Women are interested in people, men are interested in things. Who thinks this way? This is insane. All right, then we got this video. Someone sent me this. The self-improvement crisis, a generation of lost men. Sheesh.
Are laughed at. Men aren't taken seriously, and men still feel like opening up about their problems is an issue. When you're sitting there alone, regretful of most of your life's decisions so far, and you are disgusted with what you see in the mirror, what are you to do? That feeling of total hopelessness, I believe, is what the majority of men feel right before they dive into the world of self-improvement. And since they feel like they have no one else to turn to, they look up some basic questions about their problems on the internet. How to get over a breakup, how to be more productive, how to be happier, etc. And they consume video after video after video. There isn't any real visible change yet, but the hope that was once snuffed out, or was never there to begin with, starts to reel itself in like a fish that's unsatisfied with its bait. There's still some resistance to the idea that improving oneself could help fix them, but the validity of these online gurus' statements and the soundness of their advice feels good enough to give it a try. And thus, self-improvement becomes therapy for men. This method of therapy actually seems to be very useful for a lot of guys out there, both young and old. I receive plenty of comments about how someone's managed to get out of a terrible hole of depression, find meaning, and start to actualize their potential thanks to my videos, as well as other people's videos within this niche. But as my human brain that is wired to search for negativity likes to do, it became skeptical of the idea that self-improvement could be an equal, if not better, replacement than therapy for men. So how do we even get to the point where self-improvement became such a massive phenomenon for young men who are struggling, and what are the implications of this? Should men always seek out self-improvement rather than traditional therapy, or are there specific instances in which one form of healing is better than the other? Those are the questions that I will be attempting to answer in this video. My interest in these questions peaked when I was scrolling through some YouTube comments on a video I stumbled across titled "It's Deeper Than You Think" by the YouTuber Kidology. In the video, she describes the differences between forming relationships for men and women, and she provides a really interesting article that I will be citing in this video. But what really caught my attention was what was said in the top comment. I once heard an evolutionary psychologist talk about how hospitalized psychiatric male patients in London during the bombings suddenly stood up and drove around in ambulances, basically helped as they could, when only minutes ago they were deeply depressed and in catatonic state. Male patients in London during the bombings suddenly stood up and drove around in ambulances, basically helped as they could, when only minutes ago they were deeply depressed and in catatonic states. He used this example to showcase that maybe the traditional approach of talking therapy isn't as effective for men as it is for women, and that maybe there should be an approach towards helping them feel more useful. I don't know, just found that story very interesting, although I have no idea.
I've heard from a lot of men that therapy doesn't work for them, sitting down and talking. Most men work out their problems through a physical outlet. Think about like an ultra marathon running 100 miles, something extremely hard physically that's taxing on the body and taxes you mentally is how men pull themselves out of depression. The sitting down part and talking doesn't work the same. I'm sure it works for some men, but I've heard from quite a bit of others that hard physical challenges with brothers near you tends to make men feel better.
If it's true. Now, after reading this comment, I tried to scour the internet for any information to see whether this story was actually true or not, but I couldn't find anything. But let's give this person the benefit of the doubt and assume it is true, because even if it isn't, I think it gives us a clue as to why men turn to self-improvement as a form of therapy, to feel more useful. I know for me, it was incredibly difficult to feel like I had any value or purpose as a man when I was an incompetent little kid. Nobody really took me seriously because I had no confidence in myself, I didn't take care of my body, and I got pretty awful grades too. I still remember the days where I had to have parent-teacher conferences because I'd be failing English class, and my teachers and parents would just sit there and look at me like I was a toddler who just drew crayons all over the wall. If I could not use my body and mind in some way in order to achieve a goal, then my life felt pretty meaningless, and society was in accordance with these beliefs that I had no inherent value. But when you start on the path towards self-improvement, there's always something new to strive towards and always something more to get. The way you address your issues isn't by talking things out, but rather acting things out. It's like for the first time in your life, you start to realize, well, hey, maybe I'm not destined to be the average depressed person like I thought I was. And maybe I can build my value by improving myself. Of course, with talking therapies, there are sometimes goals or intentions within each session, but with self-improvement, the strength of usefulness you feel from conquering a feat of over yourself can produce more intense feelings of hopefulness. I think this explains why the vast majority of my audience, as well as the creators in this niche, are men. Men are gravitated towards this type of content because society places value on our practical usefulness and how much we can provide, instead of how nurturing we are or how in touch with our emotions we are. But why is this the case? Is it because men are innately less emotional than women, or does it have to do with how we are raised? Well, an article written by Tori DeAngelis might be able to give us some insight. In the article, she explains two psychologists' differing theories on men's inability to properly communicate and express their emotions. This inability to express and identify certain emotions is called alexithymia, and it's thought that men's rates of alexithymia are higher than women's. One of the psychologists from the article states, research on children from infancy through the school year shows how this can happen. Mothers, for instance, expose baby girls to a wider range of emotions than baby boys, and work harder to control their son's emotional volatility. Fathers step in to socialize their toddlers along gender lines at around 13 months, verbally roughhousing their sons and talking in more emotional terms with daughters. As kids get older, both parents foster this rift by discouraging sons from expressing vulnerable emotions and encouraging such expressions in daughters. I think this has been brought about by a sort of generational acceptance that this is how the world needs to be. Our parents' parents passed down this way of raising their kids, which our parents adopted, and then they imposed that onto us. And as a result, this normative alexithymia, or alexithymia that forms due to
I don't buy that this is what it is. I just think we're built different because this has been happening since before all these generations. This is happening on a global scale. It's like when you say, for example, women are interested in people, men are interested in things, or how a male has an advantage in reaction time or spatial awareness, whereas a woman can read facial expressions better. It's just our differences from a biological level. I think trying to force this with modern woo-woo to make men all open up and emotional, I don't buy it, sorry. Personally, that's just me.
Forms becomes the standard. So since we are young, we are programmed to seek out ways of dealing with hardships in the form of external action instead of internal reflection and acceptance. And self-improvement provides a path with which we can do so. My self-improvement journey really began before I had even heard of that term or knew what it meant when I started lifting weights in college. Out of all the things preached within the self-improvement community, exercise might just be the objectively best one for you to implement because it improves your well-being, mental health, sleep, life expectancy, and so much more. But getting started, especially when you have no one to help guide you through it, is extremely difficult. And that's why I have partnered with today's sponsor, Copilot. Copilot is an app that is so much more than its topic. In our current world, there seems to be a growing nihilistic cloud that lingers over society, and producing feelings of purpose are becoming increasingly more difficult due to what we do on a daily basis as well as what it used to mean to be a man. About 50 to 60 years ago, you were setting yourself up for marriage in your 20s, maybe purchasing a house, and interaction with people on a daily basis was almost necessary. But now, the modern man has no identity.
Yeah, that's a shortcoming of society. No, men used to have purpose. Men used to have a path in life, things they could strive towards with tools they could use to get there. We've taken away men's paths, their tools, and we even tell them striving for such a thing as toxic masculinity. So is this the fault of men, or is this societal conditioning at large? And now it's becoming an issue.
Exposed and broken out of a flawed system that told us to go to school, get a job, get married, and retire at the expense of having no real sense of self or direction. Before the rise of the internet and individuality, people derived much of their identity not only just from this system we were all indoctrinated into, but also based on what their peers thought of them. Community was integral to feeling a sense of meaning and purpose, and it still is. But now, pretty much the best way to find a community in our current world is through the online realm. Self-improvement is a way to accomplish not only becoming more useful, but also being part of a movement that feels bigger than you. And it helps to shape your identity more. I think this explains the more recent rise of the We Go Gym movement, because gym culture and self-improvement culture are almost one and the same. All over my Instagram Reels feed, I get short clips of buff-ass dudes working out with inspiring quotes popping up on the center of the screen while some intense dramatic music plays in the background. These videos, along with self-improvement videos, have an extremely alluring feel to them. Almost like a potential friend calling to you and reaching out and saying, hey, we understand what you're going through. We know all of these problems that...
That's just a result of your algorithm. You keep clicking on those videos. They resonate with you, so the algorithm's going to push more and more and more of those videos. It's really what it is. If you want to drown yourself in self-improvement, the algorithm will show you everything you want to see over and over again.
Modern society causes and how the world is, and we can help you with that. So give us a shot. You read through all the comments of all the other people saying motivating things and lifting each other up, metaphorically and literally, and you think to yourself, I want to be a part of this positive movement. And before you know it, you're dry scooping pre-workout, measuring the size of your arms in the mirror, and blasting hardstyle while you stare intensely at the ground in between sets. These online communities help to shape the identity of the once identityless modern man, while also making us feel more valuable and healthier in the process. It's also important to address the rise in single unwed mother households within the US and how that contributes to self-improvement's now rise in popularity. The United States has the most single-parent households than any other country, and half of all children that live in the US now only live with a single parent. Without a solid father figure in their lives, it's hard for young men to grasp the idea of masculinity and how they can start to feel like they have a place in the world. A well-involved father lowers the risk of a child doing poorly in school, getting into alcohol and substance abuse, criminal activity, and lowers the risk of suicidal thoughts. Naturally, if you're a young man and you're trying to understand how to deal with the hardships and sufferings that come with life, you're gonna search for these answers online. And thus, the rise of internet fathers or internet role models has now exploded. Now, I personally think this has definitely produced a net positive. Although many of these internet fathers and role models have a lot of beliefs and ways of functioning that I don't necessarily agree with, they have helped hundreds of thousands of men get out of a very, very rough place. And even though an internet father isn't a total replacement for a real father, it's better than having a completely purposeless child that resorts to self-destruction as a way to cope with life's inevitable challenges. Over the years, I've had a very love-hate relationship with self-improvement. Through improving myself, I was able to build this YouTube channel, create a successful business, and help positively impact the lives of others.
Isaac, how do you find people to work out with in person? Ask somebody at the gym. That's the easiest.
But as you go throughout this journey and you get feedback from all different kinds of people, you start to realize that self-improvement can potentially distort a young man's perception of objective reality and actually only exacerbate their problems instead of solve them. So now I want to talk about the problems that come with basic self-improvement, these online communities, and when men should seek traditional therapy. The biggest problem that I see with the self-improvement niche in general is that many of its creators are only contributing to recreating the problems that got us here in the first place. Many red pill and manosphere content creators will tell you, hey, this is the way that society will value you. This is the only way that society will ever work, so this is what you gotta do. Then you have a bunch of young guys trying to validate themselves for the sake of being understood and accepted, even if what they're doing isn't at all in alignment with their real interests and passions. Because of this, they are creating many new men who will only reinforce society's existing problems, because their solutions usually don't offer any new avenues that could potentially stop the endless cycle of men not feeling inherently valuable, not being in touch with their emotions, and wanting to not be alive. This can also lead to a very polarizing view of the world, as many men adopt this my way and no one else's mindset. As a result, this only breeds more disagreement between those on self-improvement and those who aren't, because the young guys on self-improvement start to believe their way of living and approaching problems is the only right way. And this tribalist mindset can sometimes cause the young men on self-improvement to be incredibly unempathetic of other people's individual problems and aspirations. I see a lot of comments like this in self-improvement communities of these young guys who think they've figured out the world, they've figured out exactly what they need to do to be the best person ever, and anyone that disagrees with them or thinks slightly different than them, they just completely bash them in the comments, and I hate to see it. There's also this feeling of superiority that self-improvement can make you feel like when you think that it makes you better than other people, when in reality, there is no one true and right way to live that will apply to absolutely every single man's life out there. Now, it may actually be true that you are more satisfied with your life than most people, and that if they do what you do, they might feel like their life is more meaningful too, but we should encourage men to approach the path towards feeling purposeful, strong, and healthy in their own way, instead of enforcing a strict set of guidelines to abide by. The goal of self-improvement should not be to put yourself on an imaginary pedestal. It's to garner the strength to help lift others up and help them see their potential, even if their way of actualizing their potential is different from yours. And possibly the most
self-improvement is very simple. It's about aligning yourself spiritually, physically, and mentally. That's it. That's really what you should go after. What that means depends entirely upon you. Masculinity is not about and being an entrepreneur and be ultra masculine. Like, that's the cringe side of this shit. That really is. You can tell these guys apart right away when you look at their channels and they're espousing shit they don't live up to. I mean, what are you talking about?
Counterintuitive phenomenon that I see from a subset of people who get into self-improvement is when self-improvement actually starts to make you feel worse about yourself than when you got into self-improvement. I'll give you an example. Let's look at some of the people who do nofap. They know that choking the chicken doesn't necessarily make them feel like they can conquer the world, but it doesn't make them feel too bad, and they only do it, let's say, once a week and not to adult content. Then they get sucked into the nofap community. They become aware of all these incredible benefits like increased confidence, more energy, and a higher work ethic. And they start to think, I have to do this if I want to become the best that I can possibly be. So they're doing it for a couple weeks and then they do the dreaded relapse. And for the first time, they start to feel absolutely awful about themselves after choking the chicken. And after that relapse, they go into a downward spiral of low self-worth, overly indulging in pleasures, and feeling incredibly depressed.
What?
It never happened like this before.
This is not what's happening in the Spartan Challenge, I can tell you that much. Yeah, it's called discipline. Falling down the rabbit hole of like, no fap ever for the rest of your life is basically somebody reading like 6-pack abs, 5 exercises to get ripped in 30 days kind of shit. Like if you're dumb enough to fall for that, it is what it is. What the whole point to do nofap is basically self-control. It's not allowing yourself to become a slave to constantly pulling your chicken every night to go to bed, to wake up, in the shower. Guys aren't doing it once a week, bro. Guys are doing it like 6-7 times a day. That's a problem. It's an addiction and you have to break it. You do it cyclically every once a week or every 2 weeks. But you don't ever, like you don't go, yeah, sexual transmutation is powerful. You have to get your sexual energy and focus it into something different other than some hedonistic turn on some adult video entertainment and cope yourself with dopamine hits. No, man, you don't pacify yourself like that as a man.
Or they did nofap, but as soon as they became aware of the concept and what people told them about what it means to be on nofap, they changed their beliefs to match that, and they let these beliefs dictate their life and how they feel. Self-improvement and society as a whole is very similar to this. We discover things that could be potentially valuable to us and increase our perceived respect and status. We conform to those expectations and norms and live by them. And when we don't meet those expectations, we automatically assume we have no value. For those people who were brought up to never feel—
Who thinks this way? This is insane. We automatically assume we have no value. Why? Because you failed? That's another thing that's in the Spartan Challenge. Guys, we're freaking out in the comment section on Discord, in the channel, like, I failed. And they'll say, oh, cool, start again then. Start again. It's day 1. Start over. Keep starting until you nail it. That's it. What in the world?
Feel like they were enough and have always been too hard on themselves, or were taught to—
Is this a pity party, dude, for modern men?
Suppress their emotions through constant work and effort. Self-improvement becomes an endless pursuit of external and internal validation that never becomes fully met. Because for these people, there are some serious psychological issues at the root of their problems that can't simply be fixed by hitting the gym, meditating, or working on a business. Instead, what they need is a different form of therapy, and perhaps the more traditional kind. Now, I searched all over the web for research done on the most effective methods of therapy for men, and to no surprise, the results are very limited. But an article titled "Engaging Men in Psychological Treatment, a Scoping Interview" has been beneficial for providing me with some insight. In the study, they looked at and compared a ton of empirical evidence on how to approach therapy treatment for men, and just about all of them agreed on a few things. The first was that actionable, goal-oriented steps that made the client feel useful was one of the best ways of doing so, which explains why typical self-improvement related activities can be so effective. The second was a non-judgmental understanding that all men are victim to the expectations of what makes someone truly masculine, which includes not showing emotion and having their more personal problems not taken seriously. But as for what the perfect type of therapy is for each different man, well, it really depends. Based on your cultural background, the trauma you've been through, and your current beliefs, the type of therapy that's going to be most effective for you will vary. And indeed, talking therapy can be more effective than just basic self-improvement, especially for men who have been taught that being vulnerable with anyone is bad. But one thing is for sure, we all need to normalize letting men open up so that they feel comfortable getting vulnerable, talking with others who have gone through a similar—
No one's saying to close yourself off. I'm so tired of this shit. No one says to not have emotions. We just say to find a band of brothers, your own tribe of men. because men can empathize with one another. You're supposed to open up to men you respect. Have a friend group, a social safety net, a circle of men you look up to and respect, your peers, and you speak with them and you open up with them about problems. No one says to be an emotionally stunted rock.
Similar journey and healing through both action and reflection. And it's my hope that more creators within the self-improvement community start to address where the root of these problems are coming from, instead of just giving them a guideline on.
You know, I saw a clip of Hamza. He was doing a podcast interview, and he said when he was at his lowest point or something, looking for self-improvement, any answer, any help. And the whole video had this serious bullshit ass tone to it. And then immediately, you know what you get? You get one of these in the middle of the video.
And that's why I have partnered with today's sponsor, Copilot.
When you hear some shit like this, it immediately makes you want to turn. It's for money. Your video was made for money. It immediately makes me want to turn off the video, not like tone deaf to what you're saying. This video is brought to you by sold out to corporations. I can't, bro. It's such a soy ass message in general. I'm sorry. I don't know who this is and what he does. And good luck to you, brother. I'm sure you helped a lot of people. You have 500,000 subs, and I'm sure you've been a positive impact to the world. But the ad that comes in the middle of the video that's supposed to be about a self-improvement crisis kills the mood. What? I don't know what else to say. Like, imagine if this video just said brought to you by Pfizer or something. What's the difference? Ugh. We all need a bit of bling. Oh, man. It was hard to get to the gym, so here's my sponsor. Jeez, man. I couldn't. I just can't, guys. Sorry. I haven't sold out to sponsors yet. They message me all the time. I may, if I get one that I like and use their products, or just make my own and sell them. I don't know. And I sure as hell won't put a sponsored ad in a video that's talking about something serious as men's issues. Yeah, we want to do a fun video about a street interview with bug sandwiches. I could put a stupid ad read in there because it's just a bug interview video. But something as serious as men's health, when there's probably men that really do need help, watching the video brought to you by Pfizer.